All right, y'all want to go ahead and jump on into this? So, good to see everybody this afternoon. Thanks for coming back out. I'll have to just be very transparent with you. Almost all the information you're getting is coming from Cheryl, so that should make you feel a lot more comfortable about this. I always had this joke that she writes my sermons, but she did write most of this one. I'll just be honest with you. And she goes, "It's not a joke this time." I was like, "Yeah, that was our parenting. This was our parenting philosophy." She goes, "I'll parent, you just don't mess it up." That's the way it works. But I appreciate her a lot, and so we work on a lot of this together. But thank y'all. Thank you so much for not only your interest in your own kids, clearly, but I know you've got a huge interest in all these kids, and not just here, but the kids that we see everywhere we go. So God bless you for that. So we want to spend most of our time going through some of your questions, and then I'm going to tack on a couple of things, Lord willing, at the end, and try to get you out of here on time. But Cheryl and I will be around to just banter around ideas with you any and every time that you want to. So I've often felt like when I was at FC and I was president of a society, that was the best training I've ever had in my life for church work. Having to get kids out of bed to come to meetings, having to decide who's going to quarterback here and who's going to do what here, and you were always trying to play the referee, trying to get fundraising going, trying everything going. I mean, it was a chore, and I remember being so frustrated with it. Then I get into church life, and I went, "Oh, I'm back in the society. Here we go." You know, but there is something true to that, and most of ministry, whether it's in the family or the church or even a business, it's not about the nuts and the bolts of everyday business. It's about managing relationships and managing people, and especially in a family. That's what you're trying to do, but you're not just managing and guiding, you're preparing so that they'll become good managers themselves, right? And Cheryl's grandmother kind of had a saying, "You really don't know how well you did as a parent till you see your kids rearing their kids. Then you know." And there is maybe some truth in that. But at the same time, I do know this, and I'm more and more convinced of this, and I just want to make sure you hear this from the beginning. Kids make their own choices. And I know a lot of great parents, good, wonderful, godly people who have kids that are not faithful to the Lord, and sometimes even worse, are just challenges to society. And you want to flog yourself, beat yourself up. You can't do that. You can't do that. And here's what we all got to remember. The perfect father, the perfect father has rebellious children. And you see that all through Scripture, right? So that's not to say, "Oh, well, I don't have to worry about this at all." No, but it is to remind us we've been called to be stewards and to share the love of the Lord. But everybody has to make their own decisions. That makes sense? So I just want you to remember that. That's very important for us. And I know Cheryl and I are kind of to this stage now. The kids are on their own. They don't even see you. They're making their own decisions. And I just got to be good with that. I just have to be good with that. Because I make my own decisions. Been doing it a long time. And just talked to my mom today. She's at my niece's wedding, so you still have your communication, but I'm still making my own decisions. Does that make sense? And so I need to remember that as well. Let's begin with a prayer, and then we'll jump into it. Our loving Father, we just thank you so very much that you not only love us, but that, Lord, you've given us young hearts to love. And we pray for our children, dear Lord. And we pray, dear Lord, this time that we spend together, that we can collectively use all the knowledge, all the heart that is in this room together to work and think and plan to guide all of our kids so that they can see you and know you and understand you. Give us humility, dear Lord. Give us wisdom. And dear Lord, help us to have the perseverance that you have for us. That the lengths that you go to love us, may we, dear Lord, have that same kind of perseverance for our own kids. We pray for each and every one of them, each and every child that's represented in all the families here, that these children may all grow to love you and serve you. And we ask all this in the name of our Savior, Jesus. Amen. All right, we opened up real quick last night by looking at just simply the 7 habits. So real fast, I want to go through the 7 habits. And again, Cheryl and I found this book to be very helpful to us, and it's got a lot of good ideas in it, very similar to the 7 habits that you probably have heard about, but this one was for families, written by the Coveys. And the reminder is the first step is to be proactive, which is what we're kind of doing today. We're being very proactive. And we're going to try to think with the end in mind. So where do I want to get to? Well, then I'm going to work my way back. But this is the end that we have with our children, with their character, with their relation to siblings, with their relations to us, with their relations to their brethren. And I've got to put first things first. Some things are just more important than others. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges in our society today, right? I mean, there's so many options. There's my violin story for you real quick. I was watching the Super Bowl the other night. Anybody here getting your cable through the internet? Okay. So the final drive, Mahomes is driving, and then all of a sudden I get this buffering thing that came up on my screen. You're working to reset, but you're, what's going on? And for the first time in 50 years, I wish I had rabbit ears on a TV. Now, only a few of you are probably going to get that reference. But it was so simple. There were just 3 channels, right? And today we have billions of channels. We've got billions of mediums of communication. We have billions of things to do. Well, some things need to come first. And we need to be mindful of what things need to be first. We got to think win-win when we're working with our children, especially in the teenage relationship. What is a win for them as well as a win for you? And to think through those discussions. And then seek first to understand, then to be understood. And that takes a lot of timing. And that takes a lot of conversation with our teens to understand their fears, to understand their frustrations. And then remind that our whole responsibility is not just for us to tell them what to do, but let's synergize and work together and encourage them to have that community. And to recognize that that synergy is what makes us stronger together. And then the last thing, sharpen the saw. Just begin with the things that are very, very rudiment in just our own physical bodies, taking care of ourselves, refreshing our mind, building up the soul, and then working on things that are social. And so those are the things that we want to work on where we can begin. And then we started with a couple of questions. First, how to discern the timing of independence, building up their confidence in decision-making, knowing what hills to die on, and we had to look at definitions of what a hill there means, and then how not to just, lose them with all our rules and regulations. Did anybody have anything else that you wanted to add to that one after we discussed it last night or having the opportunity to think on it all night? We good? All right, then the next one we did last night, and this is what we wrapped up with, how do you create a relationship with your teen so that the teen feels comfortable coming to the parents in tough situations. And really, that's just something you work on, hopefully, when they're even smaller. You build that relationship. You build that opportunity that they can always feel safe to talk to you. And I tell you, it is comforting when your kids come to you. You want them to know that. And so they need to know that this is always a safe zone. This is the cone. I would share one more thing on that one. One more thing on that one. And this is something I had to be very, very, very cautious of as a preacher. All right? Your kids don't want you telling everybody else about their problems. So you almost have to get a signed release on something. Even things that you may consider funny may be a great embarrassment to you. If they know that we're always sharing those things, they're going to be less likely to come to us. So that one did hit me later. I just wanted to pass along to you. Be mindful of that. Even sometimes, even when they're real little, this is a funny picture. This is them when they were all messy. We all laugh at. Well, they may not feel as comfortable with that. I remember Gray, there were just some pictures. I thought, oh, this is so cute. He's going, Dad, you cannot. We've got it. He didn't even like some things in the house. You know, okay, but you look so cute. You know, okay. You know, but if they know that this is a safe area, that you're going to respect that, they'll be more likely to come to you. All right. Anybody got anything else on that one? Yeah.
Yes. I thought your prayer, when you closed out last night, after we discussed that, you talked about our relationship with our Father. And I thought about that last evening. You know, if you reworded that, how did God create a relationship with us so that we feel comfortable coming to Him in tough situations? And in my mind just went through, why do I feel good going to Him? And there are several things, and so that might be good for a family just to sit down and talk.
That's a good family devotional, isn't it? Yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point. And we are comfortable going to our Father, right? Yeah, that's a great point. Anybody else? All right, let's jump on then to the next one. How do you parent teens when you have toddlers and elementary kids at home? All right, this was not something we had to deal with. So understand, I'm answering as somebody who hasn't been quite in that trench. But here's what crossed our mind immediately, all right? Every child needs to know that they are being parented with them in mind. And it's not fair for them, while they're still a child, to have to feel like they have to be an adult at the same time. And so I would say you need to be very careful of using them as free labor. So you can go on a date, or you can get away from the little ones because you've got their... We have seen scenarios like that where that was not good at all, because there was such a separation between the age group of the older one always having to take care of the younger one, so mom and dad could go out, even mom and dad could have a weekend together, and we got that just, unfortunately, we saw that create some barriers between the older child and the parents, and almost resentment for the younger kids. Now, this particular situation was where there had been a remarriage, and so in the new marriage now, the parents are starting a family all over again, and so you had almost two families to some degree, so that was another dynamic to that. But I think it's important that all of our children be parented from where they are, not always where we are and what we need out of them. Now, there clearly can be extenuating circumstances for needs, maybe for jobs, or it's an economic thing, and you just got to step up and we're going to need your help. But even in that case, there needs to be sympathy and understanding. To understand before you want to be understood. They want them to understand where you are. And so you need to have a lot of good communication in that regard, because they still have their fears, their frustrations, their challenges. And this is another thing. You are responsible for this as well, not them. Does that make sense? You brought this challenge into the scenario. But so when we were thinking about that, that's immediately kind of what came to our mind. And we need to be careful of sometimes forcing our kids to grow up too fast. You know, that they need to be kids. And so I'd be very sympathetic toward older kids that are constantly having to look after younger kids. It might be even good to get a babysitter to babysit the younger kids while you take the older child and go and do things together. That might be a good use of a babysitter for there as well. But I think that's a interesting dynamic, and I'm certainly open to thoughts and ideas. Anybody else on that one? That's a very good question. Yeah. I thought you were raising your hand. He was just being nice to his wife. Anybody else? Do you have anything you want to add on that one, Sugar? Okay. You just gotta be careful. I'm sorry.
One of the things we struggle with is we have an older child, 6 years before our other three, and they want the same rules that the older sibling gets. So why can't I, because she can stay up till 11, but we have to go to bed. So that's our tension, is they want the same expectations that the 17-year-old gets. And so we struggle with that. It's like, well, you're not 17, you're 12. So we can't have those same rules, but that's a struggle that creates tension sometimes.
Oh, I get that, yeah. No, and that, I don't even think you have to have that much of a barrier that you have that tension. Anybody here an older child? All right, can we all play the violin for a moment? You know, if we had to wait till a certain time or a certain deal, or we got it, but then it seemed like that time frame got a lot shorter, you know, as the young, what? And then what was really frustrating is when they would just get you all the same thing. What? I've been waiting for, and you just, you've got to be kidding me. Yeah, so I get it. But yeah, we got to be mindful of that. And part of that is communication and sitting down and talking. Here's why this way. Yeah, yes, ma'am.
I also was going to mention about the communication, because what you talk with your teen, you don't necessarily need the little ears to hear. And so finding space for all of that, and we still struggle, and they hear things that they probably, not be the best, but it's still, trying to deal with all the different ages with the communication.
Yeah.
It's a little challenge for us.
Well, but that's what you got to do, right? You got to find a way to make that communication go.
Yeah.
That's good. It's good.
We have found similar tension between our oldest two are only 13 months apart. But the older is a lot more responsible than her younger brother, despite the very small age gap. And I'll let the older do things that I would like. For instance, I will let her bake cookies by herself. Where the younger one, he might catch the house on fire. So we have that tension, and it's just a very small gap.
Yeah.
But it's due to personality and not.
Sure. And maturity plays a lot into it also. I think that's the way to kind of look at this also. It's not so much about age, it's maturity and responsibility. You prove yourself, then these things can take place. Maybe a way to look at that also. And gender. Yeah. And the girls are more responsible than guys. Can we just name it? Yeah. That's the only way it works. So. All right. All right, cool. Let's go on to the next one then. How do you handle the challenge? Oh, this is a good one. How do you handle the challenge that your views are more conservative than others when it comes to dress? How do you teach your children to be different, even in church settings? All right, we have personally dealt with this one and dealt with it a lot. We decided to homeschool at a time when homeschooling wasn't cool. I assume it's cool now. It seems like more and more people are doing it. It's crazy down at the college how many kids are homeschooled, but it's a growing number. But we did it when it wasn't cool, and we took a lot of criticism from our brethren for it, which part of it was surprising, but part of it I get. It was new, and there's a stereotypical thought process that comes with homeschooling. Especially 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So we had that angle, but then when we got into our homeschool community, and the homeschool community was denominational, but it was very conservative. Our kids ended up in that community, and they were like, dude, we're the ones, who are probably more, what you might say, progressive or out there, because it was like we moved into a Puritan or a Mennonite colony, and which was great education-wise. It was wild. And so here's the first thing I want you to need, and I think this is important for all of our kids to know. All of us are on a spectrum somewhere in this. And you may think you're more conservative in certain environments, but you may actually be more, quote, liberal in another environment. So be very mindful of that. Be very mindful of that. Even in our camp system, the college camp systems, we have some camps that are no shorts camps. I'm not sure if I could go there during the summer. Actually, I did. I made it for a few days. I went and visited. It was a little different, but that was the philosophy. So, you know, when you're in that environment, you need to adjust to that environment. But how do I handle it as a parent when my kids are in an environment that is not as conservative as us? Well, here's the first thing. We don't compare ourselves to others. We do not compare ourselves to others. And peer pressure is just as much alive in the parenting world as it is in the kid world. All right? And others do not set the standards for us. We are a family, and we're going to determine our own standards. And at the same time, this is, I believe, so important, especially in a church. I give other parents the liberty to parent their kids as they see best. I think sometimes whatever our personal standard is, and I know I'm guilty of this myself, and somebody else is not seeing my standard, I'm going to go to the elders and say, all right, you need to make everybody follow my standard so I will feel more comfortable here and my kids will feel more comfortable here. That's not the role of elders. All right, now if it is a true moral issue, absolutely, we can get involved. But I think we got to be careful with our kids in a situation like this, and I totally get it. I totally get it. For some reason, I was a little more comfortable with my kids in this homeschool curriculum, and they're in that environment. I said, well, okay, so you're the liberal one, you'll be fine. You know, I was good with it. But when my kids are in a setting, especially if it's church or another setting, and they're the more conservative ones, I was like, oh, for some reason that rubs me. Does that make sense? I'd rather my kid feel the other way than this way. But it's a teaching moment. It's a teaching moment to remind my children that we work on our standards. And one thing that Cheryl and I learned this too, especially working in a church, unity. Unity is the most important thing. And so there would be times, and we knew we had families who were part of our group, even in Gainesville, that had differing views on Christmas. We would not put our Christmas decorations up till we had the gathering with the kids, including the kids from those families. We had our gathering, then we put our own, so our Christmas days went up a little later in December, you know, because I wanted those kids to feel comfortable with our kids. Does that make sense? And so I've got to do what I can do as a parent to promote unity, but I also have a great opportunity in that situation to help my children understand we set our standards and we don't force our standards on others, and we don't feel inadequate if others have a different standard than us. Does that resonate? I would also do it like this. This is kind of what we had to do, let's say a church setting. Okay, so I'm having everybody over from church, and in fact, well, I'll just do it this way. We had a teen challenge, and I wanted to take the kids canoeing. We're all going to go canoe down the Santa Fe River. It's real hot, you know, but the river is so much fun, so we're going to canoe it. Well, here's the thing I sent out to everybody. Everybody who's coming, we want you to follow the camp dress code. It wasn't the Glen Springs dress code. This is the dress code you have to wear at camp. So in the email to everybody coming, we wanted your shorts a certain length. We wanted your tops to be a certain way. This is so we can make everybody feel comfortable there. And if you want to come be a part of this, we want you there, but just understand this is the dress code. Because I had kids on all sides of the spectrum of the issue, but I want us to be unified in that. So that was a way when it came to church functions and situations like that, we tried to promote unity with that so everybody would feel comfortable. And that's even kind of what we've done at camps, you know. But you also have to keep this in mind in a church setting. This is so important. This is another great teaching moment for your kids. we want everyone to feel comfortable at church. And if somebody has a differing view on something, I want them to feel comfortable here, because even if my mind, that isn't good, I'm going to have a better chance of changing that mind and that heart through peace than through friction. And just so you know, parents, this is important. Whatever negativity comes out of your mouth will come out of their mouths. And it's a lot harder when a kid says it to another kid. And you can create a divide real quick if you're not careful in even a church group. Does that make sense? So it's kind of like Paul says, I got to become all things to all men. This is a great way to learn that. This is a great way to learn that. But I definitely get it. And as brethren, we want to just be mindful of others and where others are. All right? Did I leave anything out? Anybody got anything you want to add to that? But I totally get this one. This is one of those things that you can find any and everywhere, every church.
I think this also pertains to cell phone usage, social medias, all the things that, we may have a standard for our child, but Aubrey has a different standard, or whoever. And so, they see their peers at church that have those different standards, and it becomes a real struggle because, we want our children with like-minded families and parents, and so that's where I think this for me personally is much deeper when it gets to the other aspects, even more so than dress.
For us, it was entertainment. What could you watch?
Yeah.
What was the show that the kids? It wasn't Hannah Montana, huh?
What Twilight movie?
Oh, the Twilight movies. So all the girls at church, all the little girl, and only little, they were like early teens, 12, 13, yeah, and they were all getting together to watch Twilight movies, and we were like, sorry. You can't. Well, that was really hard on Jill. And I said, here's the deal. You're always free to throw me under the bus. You can always, my daddy won't let me. That's fine. I'm good with that. Yeah, I'll be the bad guy any day of the week. And that was just kind of the deal. What was a blessing was most of the families where we might have had a difference, they were willing to, hey, no, let's change. Let's do something different, which was a great blessing. But yeah, so movies, entertainment, what you wear and can't wear, be mindful of that. But I also think this is helping develop life skills. Because we have to encourage our children to feel confident within themselves and our decisions as a family, and not feel like you're always having to compare yourself to others. But then also having the grace to say, I got to let you do you in this matter. And I've got to have the conviction to do me, But we also were very mindful of this because our kids don't necessarily understand our decisions, especially if we're on the more conservative side, And so there was a lot of conversation to commend them and just say, thank you for going with me on this. I love you that you're going with me on this. And it may make sense later, but I get it. I know where you are, so thank you. I owe you one right now. And so, yeah.
And she did, Jill came back probably after 2 or 3 years of college, and she had been to some devotional and whatever, and she comes back and she says, thank you for teaching me about modesty. And so you're not going to necessarily get that when they're 15, but hopefully if you continue to develop, then they'll realize that other people have come to similar standards, or they can start understanding as adults how you came to those standards.
Yeah. And what we did when we were trying to get our kids together a lot at church and our teen challenges, we did we kind of kept that dress code idea out there for all families. Hey, let's just follow the camp deal. We're going to be outside running around, or we're having our teen challenge weekend, and just so you know, this is what we're encouraging. But it wasn't like we sent a kid home or made them change if they didn't, but just tried to get that growing, and then everybody generally will adapt to something like that. But that was just something from the church point of view. So, any other thoughts on this one? But I get it. But you're right. You could take that to a lot of things, couldn't you? You could just take that to a lot of things. Okay. All right, the next one. How do you handle, well, speaking of homeschooling, how do you handle the challenge of unification when families choose different avenues of education? All right, let's just have a little fun for a moment. Homeschoolers, who's all homeschooling here? Okay, so your kids are weird. Good. They're right in there with ours. All right. How many of you are public schools? All right, you're all headed to jail. That's good. And how many of you are private schools? All right. Oh, wow. Okay, so it's a pretty good mix. Yeah. All right. Do we have stereotypes? Absolutely. You know what's cool? You know what's really cool? Is that we have choices like this today. How many of you were public school growing up? All right, how many of you were homeschooled? How many of you were private schooled? Well, a few. Yeah. Athens Bible School. Here.
Well, Mars Hill.
Mars Hill, same thing. That's right there.
It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, you're right there in the Tennessee Valley. All right.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. So it's a blessing. Don't let the blessing become a curse. So this kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier. You do you, I'll do me. And what's interesting with the homeschool, private school, and public school, there's probably some families that have kids in each one. You do? Yeah.
We've done all three.
Oh, all three. Okay. All right. And I've had some families I know who have one kid that's homeschooled, another kid's public school. You know, you got to determine where your child is, and so that's important. So here's what we got to do as parents. This one is all on us. This is all on us and how we communicate to our kids. All right? Just because you chose one or the other doesn't mean that one or the other is better. It's just better for you. It's just better for you. And here's the thing that we tried to work on. Of course, in our day and age, they were new. Everybody thought our kids were just going to be dorks, and they may be. I don't know what y'all's opinion are, but you know. And so, but we made sure they were in other communities and with other kids. We made sure that they were with not just kids at church, but kids at the Y, kids in other civic organizations, that they were mixing with all the kids so that they could develop the ability to communicate and associate with all. We put that on ourselves. If we're going to do this and kind of let's just be honest, it's a little more secluded, okay? It's a little more controlled. Well, that has its blessings, but I didn't want it to become a curse. You've got to learn how to work with other people. And so that was on us. That was on us. And here's what was something very, very important to us. Camp. Camp was a great way to do that, and it brings all the kids together. And so you had to mingle and work with other kids. But I think, yeah, this something, you can't let this be a division. This can easily become Jew and Gentile. And you got the Rome congregation all over again. And y'all do know that's how churches first formed. Do you ever wonder why they always had 2 aisles and 2 rows? It goes back to Rome. The Jews were on the side, the Gentiles were on the other. No, I'm just kidding. You know. But in some churches, if you're not careful, your homeschool kids are here. All your public school kids are here. All the kids who go to the same private school are here. And what you have are inadvertent divisions. So that's on us. That's on us to make sure that doesn't happen. And I think that just needs to be constant reminder coming from us as parents that we encourage unity. And we all have our own pros and cons list as to why we do things. And we always reserve the right to change our mind. And don't mess with me, you'll end up in public school next year. Just take me that far again. Yeah, so, but you have your pros and cons. All right, thoughts on that? Any additional? Yes, sir, please.
As a side part of that, not directly parenting, but indirectly, is the same attitude about unification issues when it comes to working moms, career moms versus at-home moms. That I think it's really important that we take the approach of, hey, it's your choice. Both can be done in a godly fashion. We don't compare, we don't look down on someone else for their choice, or think that we're superior for our choice.
Yeah. And we've got to give people the liberty to make their own choices. You know, you're going to have to deal with the consequences of it regardless. Our big concern of homeschooling, this was a big concern. Well, maybe they won't get the same education. Maybe it'll be a subpar education. So, man, I'm not dogging them. But when my kids took their first dual enrollment classes at Santa Fe, and then they eventually ended up at FC, they were like, this is so easy compared to mom. This is great. But our feeling was we wanted to make it strenuous so that they didn't lose out, and so you're constantly testing, you're constantly doing this, that, and the other, because, you know, that was one of the, quote, cons that you wanted to overcome. That was kind of interesting, but, you know, whatever you choose, you need to be aware of the pros and cons. You know, there's a lot of opportunities for sports and other extracurriculars in public schools, but there's also a community that you have to deal with that you can't control as much. Well, be ready for that. But that doesn't mean it's a bad decision, you know. But you can always call that audible also. You know, I'll bring you home, you know, so. All right. Yes,
So not only
yeah.
should we not be judgmental of other people and their schooling choices or whatever, but we shouldn't assume that other people are being judgmental about us. I've seen that happen quite a bit too. People are like, oh, I know they're judging me even though they're not, or they've never said anything. And I like the message paraphrase in Romans 14:1. Welcome with open arms, fellow believers who don't see things the way you do. And don't jump all over them every time they do or say something you don't agree with. Even when it seems that they are strong on opinions but weak in the faith department. Remember, they have their own history to deal with. Treat them gently.
That's a great line. Yeah, Romans 14. And to a large, this is a Romans 14, isn't it? This is a Romans 14 issue. Be mindful of that. Good, thank you. All right. All right, let's go to the next one. What is the best way to parent a teen that does not show interest in spiritual matters? How do you help them understand without it being forced? We were going through these with Jill the other night, and she goes, Dad, you have got to go listen to John Deloney. And it just so happens that John Deloney, he's one of the personalities up there at Dave Ramsey, and he works with kind of the counseling end of it. He had on his podcast a parent who was asking this exact same question. And so we went and listened to it, and here's what he said. No. But I will share a couple of those thoughts with you. But that was if anybody wants that podcast link, I would be very happy to share it with you. Okay. I want to ask a follow-up question, and this doesn't mean it's your kid, so I would love any and anybody to just help me with this. Why is there no interest? Why is there no interest? And that's a fair question. Just to say, oh, well, they're not interested. Well, why? What is it about it? Is it an apologetics issue? They don't believe in God? Here's a big challenge. Here's a huge challenge. I have seen, and this is just my experience, okay, that a lot of kids that are in IB programs, advanced intellectual school programs, or whatever else, those kids, by and large, struggle with believing in God more than other kids simply because it is hammered so hard in those programs. Well, why is your child maybe in that kind of environment? Is your child not interested because they've had a bad experience at church? Maybe they've had a bad experience with other kids That's why they're not interested. Or, I think you kind of got to get at the root of the problem. There needs to be some good, healthy conversation. Help me understand you. Okay? I get where you are, and I'm not condemning you for that. Every child gets to make their own choice. But help me understand how you got here. Help me understand why you feel this way. Help me understand if something happened, how it happened, and you need more information. And there needs to be the ability that you can say whatever you want, and there will not be a repercussion. Because I need to get the truth out of you. You need to know I'm a safe place. All right? And I need to be ready when I ask that question, to be ready for the criticism. Because it could be me. It could be me. Well, Dad, you're a hypocrite. You say one thing and you go to church and then you come home. Do you know that that's the biggest reason most kids lose their faith? Just FYI, in good, godly homes. Because what they hear is not what they see. And I don't want a part of that. I don't want a part of that. Sincerity is very important to kids. Sincerity is very important to kids. So there needs to be some good follow-up questions, and listen for the reasoning. And there needs to be an understanding once you get there that some kids are different. Immediately I thought of just a bunch of kids that we've worked with over the years, and I still try to work with. I never, ever, 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 ever give up on one of the kids. But one was the intellectual route. And it was a fight, even the whole time after he came up to UF, and I had to fight to get him and stay in touch with him. In fact, one of the best things that ever happened to him is he got the flu. I mean, he got the flu so bad. He had to go to the hospital, and Mom and Dad were hours away, so I went up and sat with him. It was one of the best things that ever happened in our relationship. Because Mr. Phil really did care about him. He may have said it all the time, but now Mr. Phil showed it, and it was a break in our relationship. But it's always going to be a fight. It's always going to be a fight. He's so intellectual that community that I cannot identify with is his community. And so, but then another kid just haughty eyes, but he's lazy about everything. He's just lazy about. Well, that's a different scenario. And then there's another kid that immediately came to our mind that just has the godliest mom in the world. She is the salt of the earth, and her other sons are just wonderful young men, especially the youngest one. And he's just not interested, but he'll still communicate with you. Never give up, never give up, never get up with him. But all three are making their own choices in that regard. And so I would encourage, and I don't know what the practice is here, your absolute best teachers have to be in your kids' classes. Your high school one especially. I mean, the cream of the crop, the best of the best. And other teachers have just got to be humble. Well, I think I am the best. Well, I'm sorry. But no, because you got to have this. That's so important. That's so important. And best doesn't mean just knowledge, that they have great biblical knowledge, but they are relatable to the kids. And the kids feel comfortable with them. That's what you do. I also believe it's very important, and whether your child is struggling with spirituality or not, you've got to get them around other Christians that share your values, that can have an influence on them. One of the boys that I was just talking about here on this list, his mom found a guy in the city. Actually, he was a city manager. Not quite of the same faith as us, but a good, godly man who really was willing to take an interest in her son, and they bonded. And it's helped him become a very responsible young man, a good young man. And then we have Mark Mosley. When you know Mark Mosley, Judge Mosley, he's taken a huge interest in this young man, and he tries to go out with him often. because those people are your greatest assets with your kids. Whether your kids, you're struggling or not, you want to find those people and put those people in your lives. And then we got to also understand this, and if you go listen to the John Deloney podcast, thought this was a great line. You love them, but you love them with boundaries. If they're in your home, you have every right to say, you come with us to church. You come with us. If you're living off my dime, I love you, you're going to come to church. That's what everybody who lives in this home does. It doesn't matter who it is. Your Uncle Louie wants to come and stay with us, he can come stay, but he's going to church with us. And you have every right to love with boundaries. And I think that's important. That's important to share with them in a loving way. But boundaries, there's nothing wrong with setting boundaries. And be mindful that you don't cave in. You don't have to cave in just because and here's the deal. If you have one child in your home who's, I'm not doing it, you feel like, okay. And then the other child who was always going to be submissive and they see this one, well, what are you teaching them? What are you teaching them? Because eventually that's going to make them think, well, that works. When I find something I don't want to do, I'll just do what he did and shut down. So you don't cave in. And I know it's a challenging situation, but it's not forced, it's love. I believe this is best for you. I believe you need this. Yes, ma'am.
Could you address the situation you talked about where a child has been hurt by the peers in the congregation itself?
How would I handle that? That's hard. That's hard because it's harder to reason with a child sometimes than an adult on those matters. The church is, okay, here's what I would do. This off the top of my head, so this is scary. That's a bad place to be. If somebody comes to me with that, they need to be reminded the church is not perfect. And I need to remind that child that, yeah, there's some things that shouldn't happen anywhere, but especially at church. You are exactly right. That is a wrong. But we need to pray for that person, not shun that person. Because if somebody acts like that, even at church, they're dealing with something. And generally, most of us, the times that we behave in a way that's really bad, there's an insecurity or something going on in our own heart. And that's just the symptom coming out at a bad time. Girls are the worst. I'll just tell you right now. Girls are mean. You know, guys, we can just punch it out and we're good. You know, girls are mean. And I don't know if this is a girl issue, but there's a dynamic there, and this is why girls can be mean, because they struggle with the insecurities more than guys. They carry so much more than guys, whether it's their looks, their abilities, whether it's their friends. I mean, they carry the burden that some guys don't carry, and so they're quick. So we need to love on them, and this is the place to do it. And bear in mind, this is a great opportunity to teach. What did Jesus say in Matthew chapter 5, verse 48? You therefore be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. He wasn't talking about just flat out perfection. He was talking about the way you love. You really want to be like God? You really want to be like God? Love your enemies. You've just been given a wonderful opportunity to love as the Lord loves. That doesn't come around every day. I don't want it to. But when it does, have the kind of faith that can jump on it. and do it. Because that person needs love. That person needs love. And aren't we glad they're in church where they're going to get to hear those lessons? You know, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. Clearly, there needs to be some sympathy. That's a scarring. I think the first inclination we generally think of, we want to run over to the offending party and hammer them. But you go over there and you tell them, okay, you go make it right. Well, even that doesn't always work. Does that make sense? Because you want it to be genuine, you know. But my responsibility is to parent my kid, not everybody else's kid. And that's not going to be the first time this is going to happen to you. You know, it is interesting though with church, isn't it? It happens at church and we can go, I'm done with church. It happens at a restaurant, you don't quit eating. I'm done with restaurants. No, I may not go back to that one. You know, isn't that weird how we do that? It's how Satan can get into us. And here's the thing. This is one of kind of our big lines. I learned it from Judge Mosley. Never give Satan more than he's already taken. Never give him more than he's already taken. Okay, he took something. That's where it ends. He doesn't get any more. He can take away my feelings at this moment, but he can't get my heart. He can't get my mind. He can't get my soul. And he can't get my opportunity to serve others. And so I will step up to the cause. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
I think it's important, especially as moms to their daughters, not to ruminate in the drama with them. So when they come and they're emotional and it's a dramatic situation, emotional feelings come out, it's very dramatic, and they're like, oh, no. It's very important not to meet them with the same energy. Stay calm and just say, yeah, and listen, but also not continue that conversation over and over and over to where it becomes almost obsessive. And I think that happens with girls and women both. You get very addicted to the drama, and they're going to learn from their mom to either let it go or to keep ruminating on it.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's hard to do because we want to fix it. We want to fix everything for our kids so they feel secure. So I had a dear friend. He was in the 5th grade, and his younger brother was dealing with a bully, and the bully was just working his younger brother over, working him over, and finally he'd had enough, and he was going to go take care of the bully himself. And so after school, this is 5th grade, he grabbed that dude and said, let's go outside right now. And so he's going to defend his little brother, and he got out there ready to draw down on the bully, and they were just about to go into it, and just before the first punch was thrown, this flash came out of nowhere and took out the bully. And when my friend looked down, it was his mom. She was in the car, and he come to pick him up, and she saw them about to get into a fight. And who did she take out? The bully. He was like, that was the worst ending ever. It was like, oh, now it's humiliating. And, you know, she's like, she's saving it. He's like, oh, I wish he'd just beat the tar out of me. I'd have felt much better than that happened. But that's what we want to do. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's our first inclination when our kid is dealing with something. I got to take out the bully. No, you don't. No, you don't. Your job is to take care of your kid. And sometimes it's helping them navigate this because this isn't the first time that it's going to happen in their life. And so I've got to help them learn to love as Jesus loves. And that's a challenge. And so you can't let the drama get to you. And you may need to go in a closet and scream or yell or go to your husband and just beat the tar out of him, and he'll take it like a man and then come out, you know. But I think that's important because Satan's tentacles can go real wide in that scenario. You got anything you ever want to add to that? Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
I think you hit it on this one and the last one. I think the key in it is your narrative.
Yeah.
The key is absolutely, you have to remember, like you said, unity is your goal. So if, as you're approaching whatever bully, whatever wrong, whatever it was, if your verbiage is absolutely determined by the fact that you do not want to grieve the Spirit.
Yeah.
You do not want to bruise the unity and the spiritual growth of not only your child and your family, but that other child and that family, guess what? You're teaching your child how to deal with a problem when they're 40.
Yeah.
And you have to realize the seriousness of your approach and your words.
Yeah. That's true. Yes, sir?
Two things. One, several of these things that you've talked about, I think it'd probably be wise for parents to talk and say, let's be proactive, as one of your first points was, that sit down with your child and say, in life, let me tell you something that's gonna happen to you at some point. So let's decide now what's the proper reaction to it, whether it's this scenario or another one. So maybe you have a couple children at home that haven't gone through this, then, have that conversation about when this does happen, because in life
Yeah,
it will.
it's not, it will.
It will.
Yeah, yeah.
So how you want to deal with it, what's the proper way? And the second thing, going back to what you mentioned earlier, you talked about all those assets that are available to parents, those people in certain walks of life that can be of great assistance. I would encourage all the parents here to really take advantage of the college students, the young professionals. There was, outside of my parents, without a doubt, the number one spiritual influence in my life were the college kids that my parents had over to church, or had over to the house all the time from church. Unbelievable the influence they had on me. And that's a great tool we have here that can be used.
Yeah, great. Yeah, yes, ma'am.
I just want to share something because it was something that I think was a great learning experience for my daughter. She had dealt with a bully last year, and I work at the same school that she goes to, and she really struggled with this. But I knew, working at the school, I know a lot of the backstory to a lot of these kids, and I found that a lot of these kids have poor home lives, typically. Not always, and we've never experienced it in a church setting where you think that everybody should be kind of on the same page. But I told her, I said, well, just kind of avoid the situation that that, like, when you're going to be in class with her, just kind of maybe sit a different place. And so I started sort of, every time I would see this child that was bullying my daughter, I would just pour love into her. Well, now this year, this little girl, she'll fight for my daughter. It's come all the way back around, and now she won't let anybody talk bad about her. She won't let anybody do anything, and which, I mean, it's not a huge issue, but with other people being bullies, but like this specific girl, and I don't know, what the reason, what the target was. Sometimes it's just my daughter's quiet and bashful, and maybe she was an easy target, but now it's come all the way back around, and now she'll do anything for this kid, for my daughter.
That's a great way to handle it. Yeah. But I get it. It's not easy. It's not easy on us. I think sometimes it's almost harder for the parents sometimes when you got to sit back and watch your kids navigate challenges. And, there's some challenges you can handle better than others. And some you can just run away from, but church isn't one of them. You can't run away from it. Yeah. All right. Let's go to the next one. I like this question. Why do many children fall away or lose their faith while growing up in a faithful home? What are some obstacles at home that could contribute to this outcome? I grew up in West Texas, and there were like 12 of us in the middle school class. You get to high school, it dwindled a little smaller. By the time I was in high school, there were only 4 of us, and then after graduation, there's only 2 of us that you would say are faithful. What happened? What happened? I shared this with Jared on the podcast today. I'll just share it with you. He may edit it out. But it's, there's a lot he should edit out. You ever heard the phrase, is it a sound church? You ever heard it? It's a sound church. Generally most people are referring to 1 or 2 theological issues. I used to get phone calls. Hey, yeah, so we're going to visit me on time. Is this a sound church? Yeah. Oh, good. I just need to make sure. It's like, what's your definition of sound? So it's kind of funny. So we usually have 1 or 2 issues or whatever in our mind.
We're completely unsound.
Yeah, shut up, we're terrible. And who are you again? Where are you from? Oh, yeah, no. But is a church sound if it's losing half its kids? Would you consider that sound? The word sound means healthy. Is that healthy? I mean, you ever gone, a place membership, you sit down with the elders? To me, that's one of the questions you ought to ask. Where are your kids ending up? That'll give me a good idea whether I really want to be a part of this. Where are your kids ending up? Oh, we don't know. You don't know? Or, yeah, what? You know what I have found? These are just my opinions on this question. These are parents that are still going to church, but their kids aren't. One of the most detrimental things you can do to your kids is complain about church in front of the kids. Complain about the brethren, complain about issues, and always be negative. And you may be right. I'm right. No, he's wrong on that issue. And let's just be honest. For some of us growing up, if you weren't arguing at church, then you weren't at a good church. Yeah. And I've often wondered if that's why my high school in class got smaller over the years. And I used to think I saw Norma Bowman not long ago. Oh, she's wonderful. I just love her. And I said, hey, can you help me with my history? Because I know I'm probably a kid like everybody else. I probably remember things wrong. But it seemed like a lot of the preaching, a lot of teaching was, a little negative, this, that, and the other. She goes, oh, no, you're exactly right. That's exactly what it was like. And she goes, that's why Dee got in so much trouble. And I was like, wow, okay, so I wasn't just conjuring this in my mind. If it's negativity that is constantly shared with them about your religious experience, why would they want to be a part of it? Why would they want to be a part of it? Your verbiage, your reaction to church is so important to what their faith is going to be. We were eating dinner with Jill, maybe just last night or not before last. No, it wouldn't be last night, not before last. And we were just talking about a couple. She goes, "That happened? You mean that was going? Y'all never? No, we never told you. Are you crazy? Yeah, you're 26. You just barely made it in under the stipulation. Because they don't need to know those things. They don't need to hear those things. Because it's not something they're mature enough to handle. Your faith can still be strong while managing those conflicts or managing those things. They're not in that place emotionally or spiritually, clearly. So I believe it's imperative that our kids hear from us the blessings of the Lord, the goodness and things that are taking place. And even when there's negative, we get the spin on it that this is a teaching opportunity. Because they need to know the grace. They need to hear the love. They need to hear that these people love you fiercely, even when there may be challenges, or it's going to be hard to hold on to them. Another thing is you need to choose your issues wisely. Here's what I'm seeing among a lot of our kids, okay? We have a lot of issues that are going around, and I'm not going to get into them. I have my own feelings about how churches should spend money, how churches do other things, this, that, and the other. That's fine. That's fine. Not going to talk about that here. But here's what is not debatable. That the church should be serving others. True religion before the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in time of trouble and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. This generation holds that dear. And they want to see that from us. And they should see that from us. That we are in the business of helping the helpless. And we do it unapologetically. Whether it's collectively, individually, it's who and what we are. Because if they don't see that, or they just hear us talk about that, this is why am I a part of this? Or they hear people fight over all the, well, it's a good thing to do, but you're doing it wrong. And I get it. I'm not getting into those debates. But if that's all, well, that's a good thing to do, but you're doing it wrong, so I'm going to do nothing? Well, time out. That doesn't resonate at all with a young person. Does that make sense? So you need to choose your issues wisely. And I think it's important to show them. This would be my third thing, and I want to hear your thoughts. We want our kids to have a relationship with Jesus. Not just a religious association. And so it needs to be more heartfelt. It needs to have some passion. It needs to have some tears. It needs to have some prayer. Don't be afraid to talk about the Holy Spirit, please. Don't be afraid to talk about love and peace and grace and forgiveness. And don't be afraid to have fun at church. Is it? Where is the verse that says it's supposed to be a funeral? It's got to be in there somewhere. Because it's so funny. We're laughing and enjoying each other's company. The guy gets up to welcome and everybody goes. We're not supposed to enjoy this. This is carrying our cross. Enjoy it. Enjoy it.